Hi everyone, and welcome back to Trapped by Love. If you're new here, my name is Emma Carrington. By way of disclaimer, we discuss cases of domestic abuse and domestic homicide on this channel, so if that's not the kind of content you were looking for, I completely understand. Thanks for stopping by. My aim in covering these cases is to honour the victims of these crimes and to get their stories out there in the hopes of warning others who may face similar situations. So in saying that, I mean absolutely no disrespect to any of the victims or their loved ones. The hope is that the more people who recognise the red flags and warning signs of abusive relationships, the less prevalent these cases will be in the future. Knowledge is power, and we need to know what to be on the lookout for so we can protect ourselves and each other. So let's go ahead and get into this week's case. Today's case is that of Za'Zell Preston. Za'Zell Dominic Preston was born in Orange County, California on the 5th of September 1985. Zazelle was friendly and creative. She enjoyed painting and dance, and she even had dreams of making ballet her career. However, she ended up on another path, the path to motherhood. At 17, Zazelle, ZZ to her friends, fell pregnant to her high school boyfriend, and thoughts of art school or professional dance were replaced with the love of a tiny little bundle of joy that she named Ziana. Zazelle became a model in order to provide for her daughter. She was quite successful due to her dancer's physique and natural beauty. Then, unfortunately, after the birth of their second daughter, Valis, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, Zazelle and her high school boyfriend split up in 2008. Not long after this split, Zazelle met 27-year-old William Wallace. She was 23, and she thought she'd found the love that she was looking for in this hard-working dock worker who was ready and willing to step into a fatherly role for her two little girls. However, Zazelle's mother and grandmother were seeing William a bit differently to the way she was. They noticed the possessive way he treated Zazelle. He didn't like her going out with her friends or getting dressed up for anyone but him. This included for modelling jobs. Yes, these red flags were evident to her family early on, and they tried to talk to Zazelle about the behaviour, but she thought, unfortunately, like a lot of domestic abuse victims do, that her partner was doing this and behaving in this jealous and possessive way because he loved her so much. And the fact that Zazelle thought this and thought this way isn't her fault. That notion has been perpetuated by pop culture in movies and TV shows for decades, telling us that this is how relationships are supposed to be and it's how someone shows love. But that's not the case at all. This is control, not love. It got to the point that Zazelle wasn't allowed to do any of the things she enjoyed doing, like dancing or painting. He took all the things she loved from her, stripped her of her identity. And this is a red flag within a red flag. Another is the awful side of someone being ridiculously possessive, and that is the fact that they're often projecting their guilt over their own misdeeds onto their partner. And William was no exception. He had many affairs and would lie and twist things, essentially gaslighting Zazelle whenever she found out about and questioned him in regards to his infidelity. He blamed the women, explaining to Zazelle that he wasn't doing anything. These women were just throwing themselves at him. He was completely innocent. On top of the control, emotional and psychological abuse that he was doling out, William became very physically abusive. The violence was evident to all of the neighbours who have said they often heard screams and thumps and coming from the couple's home. William had also threatened to kill her on several occasions. These incidents led Zazelle to leaving him a number of times. However, as is the case with manipulative abusers, once they've got their hooks in you, it can be difficult to escape for good. And so William would convince her to come back anytime she broke free. Zazelle knew in her heart that she was being abused and manipulated, and she'd reached out for help from the Eli Home for Abused Women and the director there, Laurie Galloway, who echoed Zazelle's family in urging her to leave William once she'd heard some of what Zazelle had been going through within this relationship. Zazelle finally got a brief reprieve when William was charged and jailed for domestic violence against her. Now, if you've never been in a DV relationship, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this distance would allow Zazelle to move on and leave this dirtbag behind. Unfortunately, that's not quite how it works. His incarceration would have left her feeling guilty. See, he's been blaming her for everything for so long that even though we from the outside can see that his actions are what led to his arrest, from where she's standing, she's to blame. This relationship with William had broken down Zazelle to a shell of her former self. He had removed everything from her that made her happy and whole and replaced it with himself. So in her crushed state, with no sense of self or self-esteem, he was the only thing that brought her any joy. Her happiness came from not upsetting or angering him. And because of this, he was able to convince her to go and visit him in prison. And she once again placed her hope in the promises that he was showering her with. Promises that he'd change, that he'd found God, and that things would be different. But they weren't. And within 3 weeks of his release, those promises would be broken. And William was once again abusing Zazelle, and the cycle started over again. William quite often beat his wife to unconsciousness. One such occurrence was on the night of their wedding. At the beginning of 2011, Zazelle announced that she was pregnant with William's baby. This struck fear into her family's hearts, but Zazelle hoped that this would be what was needed to set William onto the right track. But this wasn't the case. William continued to beat Zazelle throughout her pregnancy, in the end causing the baby to arrive early due to a blow to her stomach and his merciless violence. Once their baby boy Marcel was born, Zazelle realized that this was never going to end. The birth of his child had not even given William pause in the abuse, so she knew it was time to get her ducks in a row and get out for good. Her children were suffering. Her daughters were petrified of William, and now she had this tiny baby to try and protect as well. It was time to get organized and get out. But this wasn't something that she could do at a moment's notice. She couldn't just announce it. It would have to be planned and done over time without William's knowledge to escape safely. So while she was getting things sorted, Zazelle enrolled in Cypress College to study and become a domestic violence counsellor. Lived experience is so valuable in a field such as DV, and Zazelle felt she could use the trauma that she'd been going through to help others. She also wanted to be able to financially support herself and her children. Of course, the course she was undertaking was taking Zazelle's attention away from William, and this definitely didn't sit well with him. He didn't like being her second or even third priority because, of course, she's still caring for 3 small children. Whether it was because it wasn't about him, or if he could feel that she was slipping away and he was losing some of the control he had over her, William's behaviour got more erratic, if that was even possible. He was constantly sending abusive texts whenever she was out of his sight. Then, on Christmas Eve of 2011, Zazelle and William attended a Christmas party at their neighbour's home. The guests at the party described the couple as being happy and in good spirits when they left to go back to their own home. However, this didn't last. The neighbours also reported they could hear crashing and screaming coming from Zazelle and William's apartment not long after. People even saw Zazelle running from the home and trying to get away, but William grabbed her and dragged her back into the apartment. Sorry, I'm going to stop here for just one moment because this is not the first case that we've discussed on this channel, and we're still in single digits where this scenario has played out. Please, if you see someone trying to escape a dwelling or running from their partner, please call the police and report it. This is not behaviour to be brushed aside. Please, can we all start looking out for one another? please. Okay, so Zazelle got dragged back into the home and the violence continued. William threw his wife around the living room and threw a glass coffee table, causing it to shatter. This cut Zazelle's head and knocked her out. William, at this time, had Zazelle's 8-year-old daughter come and help him move Zazelle from the lounge room into the bathroom, where, by both their accounts, William dropped her and struck her head on the toilet. Young Ziana goes on to recount how she pulled glass from her mother's skin and hair before they then moved Zazelle into the bed. The following morning, Christmas of 2011, both Ziana and her little sister, Valis, raced into the living room as most children do to see what Santa had brought them. They watched as their stepfather dragged their mother into the lounge room and put a pair of sunglasses on her, propped her up on the lounge, and then put the 7-week-old Marcel to her breast. So while Zazelle was sat up on the lounge with sunglasses on, William proceeded to record the girls opening their gifts. When they tried to interact with their mother and got no response, they asked William what was wrong with Mum. And he replied, quote, "Mummy got drunk and ruined Christmas." When Ziana went to embrace her mum to thank her for their gifts, she realised that she was stiff and cold to the touch. You see, Zazelle was deceased, and her killer had just recorded her children opening gifts in front of her corpse. At around 9:30 that morning, finally realising he couldn't keep up the charade any longer, William Wallace called 911 and said his wife needed medical attention. When paramedics arrived, Zazelle was still sitting on the lounge wearing her sunglasses. It didn't take paramedics any time at all to work out that the young mum before them was beyond their help. They called law enforcement, and when questioned, William said that Zazelle had been drunk and lost her footing and fell into the coffee table. However, the scene around them told a different story. There were numerous holes in the walls where William had obviously put his fist through the gyprock. There was also blood smeared on the walls and bloody drag marks on the floor. These poor children, how traumatizing. Even if it had just been the damage to the home on this Christmas morning, that would have been scarring enough. This was obviously something that they were so used to that they just passed it by to go open their presents. But to have it culminate in the murder of your mother, I just can't imagine. After an extensive interview, William was charged with murder and held on a $1 million bail. He, of course, pleaded not guilty because why would he start taking accountability for his actions now? Now, for some reason, his trial has been pushed back time and again, and all the while William's been sitting in jail until this year, 2021. William Wallace finally went to trial for the murder of Za'Zell Preston and was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced on the 4th of June 2021 to 15 years to life. The jury apparently had the choice of a variety of charges from involuntary manslaughter to first-degree murder. Unfortunately, because it had been almost a decade and some of the witnesses, namely the children, had initially been coached by William to lie at the time, so now as they recounted the facts, their original statements weren't lining up. Then there was Zazelle's grandmother, who had received a phone call from William that tragic Christmas morning, and in this call he had told her that he and Zazelle had been drinking and he had tossed her around a bit. Zazelle's grandmother is now 90 years old and didn't remember him using the word tossed when she was questioned on the stand. She's 90. It was 10 years ago. Can we cut her some slack? But let's just take a minute and think about how brazen this piece of crap is to be openly telling her family that he's tossing her around. This just shows how little regard he had for her and how entitled he felt to be treating her this way. In the most disgusting portrayal of unhealthy relationship goals ever, defense attorney Heather Moorhead said, quote, "You will hear about a relationship with a lot of arguments and a lot of yelling, but also a lot of love," end quote. No. This was not love. This was abuse. William's attorney also stated in the trial that he had done nothing to cause Zazelle's death, and there was no indication that he set out to kill her. Okay, maybe he hadn't set out with an actual step-by-step plan, but he had absolutely no regard for her well-being or her life. The senior deputy DA stated that William, quote, did what he always did, expecting Zazelle to survive like she always did. But unfortunately, this time, it was taken too far. So, 15 to life. He was credited with the 9+ years he's already served while waiting to go to trial. But the fact that he's still blaming Zazelle and telling everyone that she was drunk and fell and the rest of his nonsense, and that he's not showing any remorse, will hopefully mean he's not granted parole anytime soon. Unfortunately, once he is eligible for parole, this poor family is going to have to go in there and tell their story and give their impact statements and try and keep him where he is for as long as they can. Every year, or how often it comes up for him to come up for parole. And that's just heartbreaking. That's the rest of those little girls' lives. And his son who's now 10. It's just devastating to think what they've got in front of them. Zazelle's children have been raised by their grandmother, and I hope you will join me in taking a moment this year on Christmas Day to send them some love and a prayer for healing now that they finally have a conviction in this case. That's all I have for you, my friends. If you've stuck with me this far, you are amazing. I hope Santa is especially kind to you this year. I hope you all enjoy your holiday break, however you celebrate, and I will see you in the new year. If the content in this case has raised any concerns for you regarding your own relationship or that of a loved one, please reach out for help. There is a list of resources in the show notes and the description box below. If you enjoy true crime, please consider subscribing or check out another episode. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case, so drop a comment below. For my friends watching on YouTube, the reason I'm here is because I believe this is a really important topic that needs more exposure so we can all stay safe from abusive relationships. This is my little sidekick.
Hello.
So from our family to yours, Merry Christmas, stay safe, and we'll see you in the new year.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Mwah. Love ya.